Welcome to the 2021 Miriam Aaron Roland Volunteer Service Prize. Thank you for being here for this special celebration. My name is Luke Terra, and I'm an Associate Director at Stanford's Haas Center for Public Service. We'd like to start our event with a recognition that Stanford sits on the ancestral and unceded land of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people. Consistent with our values of community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge, honor, and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. It's an honor to gather with you to present the Miriam Aaron Roland Volunteer Service Prize, which annually recognizes a faculty member who engages students in integrating academic scholarship with significant and meaningful volunteer service to society. At a time when our nation and world needs visionary leadership, we are gathering today with two leaders who have contributed so much to integrating academic scholarship with volunteer service to society, Miriam Roland and Professor David Cohen. Miriam Roland established the Roland Prize in 2001 as part of her 50th Stanford reunion. The award, first officially given in 2004, has been unique at Stanford for its focus on the significant role that public service by faculty can play in benefiting students, communities, and the faculty themselves. Through her thoughtful philanthropy, Miriam has played an instrumental role in setting Stanford on a course to embed service more deeply into the academics and culture of the university. Thank you to Miriam for being with us today. And we are delighted to celebrate and recognize this year's Roland Prize recipient, David Cohen, the WSD Handa Professor in Human Rights and International Justice, Professor of Classics, and Director of the Stanford Center for Human Rights and International Justice, formerly the Handa Center. David is a leading expert in human rights, international law, and transitional justice, as well as one of the world's leading social and legal historians of ancient Greece. Students in his classes benefit from hearing his firsthand experiences, participate in research and summer internships in communities in Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, and often go on to work in the field of human rights. We'll hear from some of David's students later in the program. I would also like to acknowledge past recipients of the Roland Prize and thank them for attending, as well as the many other faculty members doing critically important work to connect their classroom teaching to the broader community through Cardinal courses. Together, we are shifting the culture to make service a distinctive feature of a Stanford education and to accelerate solutions to the pressing challenges facing our local communities, nation, and the world. Now, I'd like to introduce Deborah Satz to say a little bit more about our awardee. Deborah is the Vernon R. and Elizabeth Warren Anderson Dean of the School of Humanities and Sciences and has been a member of the Stanford faculty for 3 decades. As a political philosopher, Deborah addresses some of the most pressing challenges and fundamental controversies about freedom, equality, and fairness. Her enduring commitment to ethical inquiry and rigorous thought has shaped and continues to inform everything from her research and teaching to her leadership roles in daily life. She herself is a past winner of the Miriam Aaron Roland Prize, and we're delighted to have her back here today. It's my honor to introduce Deborah Satz.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for all you do. Thanks, of course, to Miriam for this, giving us this occasion to honor our amazing faculty, and thank all of you for attending. I'm really delighted that I have the opportunity to celebrate David Cohen. As you heard a bit of from Luke, I just want to point out that David is a really unusual scholar with an unusual trajectory. And as I read it, his career has had at least 2 chapters, although there's some overlap between those chapters. So take chapter 1, David emerges as one of the world's leading social and legal scholars of ancient Greece. He writes on sexuality in the ancient world, and I want to single out his 1995 book, Law, Violence, and Community in Classical Athens, which looks at law's role in at least ameliorating some aspects of violence, although not, as we know, eliminating violence. His research shifts somewhat in the 1990s. It certainly shifts in time with a project that's incredibly important both to scholars and to communities who are dealing with traumatic events, genocides, deportations, civil wars, and he begins a project to collect the records of national war crimes programs in about 20 countries. So again, incredibly important. This is the beginning of chapter 2. And chapter 2 activities include leading justice sector reform initiatives and contemporary tribunal monitoring programs throughout Southeast Asia, especially East Timor, Sierra Leone, and then also in Cambodia, and then also in Bangladesh and Rwanda. One common thread is that his incredible research skills persist between chapters 1 and 2, and he takes his scholar's mind to work on some really pressing and fundamental problems in our world. He came to Stanford after founding the War Crimes Center at UC Berkeley, and in a brilliant move, my predecessor, Richard Saller, recruited David here, where he transformed the War Crimes Center into what was initially a Handa Center on Human Rights, and now is the Center for Human Rights and International Justice. And this is amazingly important to us. Human rights are really the most powerful language we have in the world today, and the most common language for articulating the claims of humanity. Every person's status as a member of the human moral community. And before David came to Stanford, we had no program in human rights in the School of Humanities and Sciences, despite the incredible importance of this topic and enormous student interest. And since he's arrived, David helped establish a successful minor in undergraduate human rights. He leads the Center of Human Rights important research projects, and he teaches multiple classes on slavery, on human trafficking, on transitional justice, as well as classes on human rights. And you could count before David came the number of courses with human rights in the title in the School of H&S, and maybe it was 1, probably it was 0. So this has been incredibly important, and he's transformed the lives of so many of our students, both on the undergrad level particularly, but also scholars at all levels in the university, to make human rights a serious engagement, a serious subject for them to engage with. Beyond Stanford, he's a major voice from the Academy on issues of human rights, especially in Southeast Asia. He's been at the forefront of developing legal infrastructures to support societies in avoiding human rights violations. He directs a summer institute in international humanitarian law and human rights, which is held in Southeast Asia every year in partnership with a local institution. And I want to say one thing I really like is sometimes when Stanford engages globally, it does it in a more top-down way. And one thing I really appreciate about the way David engages is he engages with actors on the ground in a more bottom-up collaborative way. The Roland Prize recognizes faculty who bring their knowledge into the world to solve problems and to serve communities. And in nominating him for this prize, his colleagues and his students note numerous ways in which he bridges scholarship and public service. So our former dean, Richard Saller, wrote, and I quote, "David places great emphasis on the need for academic grounding of advocacy work. In his view, it's essential that the students not just be well-meaning, but also well-informed about the legal complexities of human rights issues." And as I say, chapter 1 and chapter 2, that scholars' commitment right, to detail and to figuring out what works, what happens, it continues. David's colleague at the Center for Human Rights, Senior Program Manager Jesse Bruder wrote, and I quote, "It's worth noting that David's mission aligns neatly with the university's new long-range plan of engagement beyond our university. The center, under David's leadership, recognizes that the urgent challenges at the heart of our work, human trafficking, rising authoritarianism, supporting nascent institutions of international criminal justice, and providing mental health care for victims of gross human rights abuses, necessitate the fusion of teaching, research, service, and community partnership. The Roland Prize also honors faculty who transform the lives of their students, encouraging them to engage in public service. For students, participation in David's classes sparks a passion for work in human rights. He has an amazing network of contacts worldwide, which he calls upon to give students the opportunity to apply what they've learned in his classes to research projects and internships. I'll just quote quickly from one of his students, Kira Jasper, who wrote, quote, "After taking his course, I interned for one of the center's partner organizations in Indonesia for a summer. Since that summer, I've had the privilege of working closely with David and other judicial reform and human rights-related projects in Indonesia, and he's been my biggest supporter and most important mentor for me, both at and beyond Stanford." Stanford has many amazing scholars and teachers, but David stands out among them as the ideal type of a faculty member who engages students in integrating academic scholarship with significant and meaningful service to society. On behalf of Stanford University, I'm delighted to recognize David Cohen as the 2021 Miriam Aaron Roland Volunteer Service Prize recipient.
Thank you, Deborah. As we've heard, in addition to the many contributions as a teacher and as a scholar, David Cohen has encouraged the next generation of engaged scholars through providing guidance and mentorship and facilitating service experiences for students. We now have the chance to hear from two of these folks, current student Kira Jasper and alumna Anjali Katta. Please join me in welcoming them to offer a few words.
Thank you so much, Luke. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to speak about the impact that David has had on my life and Stanford trajectory, as I know he has impacted generations of students even far beyond the farm. David is an incredible mentor for a multitude of reasons, but when I reflect on my experience working with David over the past 3 years, there are two specific ways that he works with students that I think make him unique and reflect the character of the Miriam Roland Prize. First, David prioritizes nurturing student potential and passion, helps students to fill the knowledge gaps that they might have to achieve more than they previously could imagine, and has seen my potential and the potential of my peers before we even see it in ourselves. When I first met David at his office at the GSB Coupa during my freshman year to talk about an internship that the Center for Human Rights and the King Center were hosting in Jakarta, I admittedly felt a little bit lost as he detailed the various human rights institutions that Indonesia has and issues in interpreting Indonesia's blasphemy laws. And although I didn't know a lot about Indonesian law or judicial reform measures before participating in the internship, I did mention at the end of that conversation that I had gone to Indonesia before and was interested in learning Bahasa Indonesia at some point. And I think he responded very elatedly because finally, after decades of working in East Timor and in Indonesia, one of his students was interested in learning Bahasa Indonesia. And from that first internship in Jakarta in 2018 to the many projects that I've had the fortune of working with David on business and human rights, to working with the IIMM, he has really supported me to learn more about Indonesian law and ultimately returned to Indonesia last year to learn Bahasa Indonesia. And this is the kind of support that he has given students from all across the United States and the different universities that he has worked with, and especially at Stanford. Second, David treats everyone that he works with respect and as equals. This year, I've had the opportunity to work with him and 2 other undergraduates on a project studying Ethiopia's legal pluralist and federalist system. And even though this was a project that all of us didn't have a lot of background in going in, he always approaches conversations in our meetings interested in not only understanding what we had to say, but also really taking our questions seriously and making us feel respected and valued, and having the confidence and feeling the confidence that he has in our thoughts and opinions has made me grow as a scholar in more ways than I previously could have imagined going into Stanford. David has provided so much valuable insight and encouragement and support into my interest in returning to Indonesia after graduation, from helping me to understand nuances of human rights laws and institutions, to also lecturing me on why I should be more careful about eating street food in Indonesia or riding motorbikes. And all of the students that I have talked to who have worked with David shared the same admiration and appreciation for all that David has had for us. And I'm really honored to have been a student that David has not only mentored and whose life has been changed so much because of his work and his impact. And now I'm really pleased to welcome Anjali Kata to speak a little bit more about how David has impacted her Stanford career.
Well, thank you, Kira. Yeah, my name is Anjali Kata, and I graduated from Stanford in 2019 with a degree in engineering physics and a minor in human rights. I currently work at UN Global Pulse, a group that uses technological and data-driven tools for development and humanitarian aid. Without David, I wouldn't be working here. David was key in affirming that I could be interested in science and engineering, but still work towards the human rights and social justice causes I cared about. I met David through minoring in human rights and was a student in one of his classes. But to me and many others at Stanford and beyond, David is so much more than a professor. He is a mentor, and most importantly, he is a great friend. There are very few professors like David. He goes out of his way to guide students, and I've never met another person so generous with their time, despite what seems like a billion other commitments. There are also very few professors who still have the sleeping habits of college students, and some of the funniest encounters with David are when you submit something at 3 a.m. and he promptly responds. When young prospective human rights minors ask me for advice, I always tell them to speak to David because he will always have some sage wisdom, and you'll become a part of the welcoming and wonderful human rights community at Stanford. I remember fondly the afternoons at Coupa Cafe, where David would speak to what felt like 100 students in one afternoon. And over the years, I've become good friends with many of the other students that frequented the famous Coupa afternoon office hours, like Kira. David embodies what it means to be a mentor. He connects people together and finds meaningful projects for them to work on. He also always knows someone somewhere and will think of ways that projects, ideas, and people fit together. When I traveled in Southeast Asia, David had someone I could meet in almost every country I visited. Personally, David has been responsible for so much of my growth in the last couple of years. His unwavering commitment to justice has inspired me to work on issues I care about while exploring all the different approaches available. David is also the reason my mother let me travel for 8 months in Southeast Asia after I graduated. He told her that he'd done something similar in Europe and that I would be just fine and would learn so much more about the world than in a regular office job. He was right. From working at LAPE, a human rights center partner organization in Indonesia doing environmental legal research, to working with Lee Ashley on the environmental impacts of the Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar, David has been the driving force behind so many of my interesting experiences. What made the biggest difference for me, however, was David's firm belief that you don't have to have everything figured out, and that frankly, having everything figured out is boring. He has been incredibly supportive of following your nose into what's interesting and what you care about, and not worrying about 10 or 5-year plans. He grades such as learning, seeking experiences outside the Stanford bubble. For someone like me who is interested in and cares about so many different things, his support has given me the confidence to carve my own path. I know I speak for so many when I say that David is a one-of-a-kind professor, friend, and mentor. He's encouraged and supported so many students into pursuing meaningful, fulfilling lives guided by justice and serving others. He is also very humble, and I know he'll think what I'm saying is gratuitous, but I mean every word. Thank you for your food recommendations, your hilarious stories, particularly those about Cambridge, your guidance, unwavering support, and kindness. You're truly deserving of this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira and Anjali. I would now like to invite Deborah Steipeck, Faculty Director of the Haas Center for Public Service, to present the award.
David, we're so grateful to you for your leadership and for being such a valued teacher and mentor to so many students over the years. So for your exemplary work in involving Stanford students in integrating academic scholarship with meaningful service, it's my great honor to virtually present you with this award. I wish it wasn't virtual because it would be so nice to all be in a room together. But it is what it is. So I just want to say congratulations on being named the 2021 recipient of the Miriam Aaron Roland Volunteer Service Prize. And we'd now like to hear a few words from you if you're willing to share.
Thank you very much. It's odd, that you spend 40 years of a career, standing in front of groups of students in classrooms and colleagues in conferences and judges and prosecutors around the world in training sessions, and then something like this happens and you sort of feel like you really know what to say. But the first thing I have to say is thank you to all of you who made this possible. I could spend the whole time, the time that I've been allotted, just going through each and every person. But thanks, of course, to Miriam Roland for creating this program to recognize individuals in the university, try to make a difference. And thank you to all of those who nominated me and for all of the kind words that I've heard. It's not difficult to be a good mentor when you have amazing students to work with. And that has been my good fortune and my privilege. And it's also, I'd say, one of the things that has been transformative for me in moving from several decades at Berkeley to Stanford, which is not to say that I did not have some good students at the War Crime Studies Center. But I've never had so many students who have found human rights to be a focal point and who have so much to contribute and so much potential to make a reality of what Stanford commits itself to, which is educating global citizens who will make a difference in our world. And it's an incredible privilege to have worked not only with Kira and with Anjali, but with, I could spend several minutes just naming all of the other incredible students that I've been able to work with. At the same time, it's really unfair to my colleagues to create an impression that I do this alone. And so having the support of the amazing team that I have at the center and individuals associated with the center, Penelope and Jesse and Steve and Beth Van Skok at the law school and others, is instrumental to being able to do what we do. Then it would also not be possible without the institutional support that Stanford provides. And that was a surprise to me coming from Berkeley to Stanford, that a university could really put so many resources into enabling students to go out into the world and to assist faculty in helping them do that. And there are so many individuals and entities on campus that deserve the credit for that, beginning, of course, with Deborah Satz and the support that our center receives from her and humanities and sciences. extending to the King Center and the Haas Center that provide those summer internships of the kind that Anjali and Kira and many other students have benefited from. That's what has enabled students to spend a summer at the National Genocide Museum in Cambodia, which we've now had several years of students interning there and helping the museum develop exhibitions to inform the Cambodian public and international visitors and so forth, or to enable Kira, Kaylana, Anjali, Alicia, Melody, and others to go to Jakarta and work with our amazing NGO partners. And what Deborah said is exactly right, which is that if you want to engage internationally, and you want it to be sustainable, the people who really drive the work are the people who are there and will always know their country better than you ever will, no matter how much time you spend there. Another, of course, another partner is global studies. And the kind of courses that I teach have been assisted through course innovation grants and so forth that help me to bring in outside speakers, which is also a way of connecting students to opportunities abroad. And finally, one of the current initiatives that is underway and that really connects the work that we're doing now at Stanford to what we began more than 20 years ago in the collection that Deborah mentioned, is working with the Stanford University Library and Mike Keller and his team. We have just become the official electronic repository for the entire archive of the Nuremberg Tribunal. That work is the foundation for developing a global human rights resource, digital resource for teaching, research, informing the public, both at Stanford and globally. And they've been an amazing partner. So it's this combination of people that has enabled me to do what I think is the most important part of my job. It's not just imparting skills and knowledge in the classroom, though, as Deborah said, that's essential, because advocacy that is not based on evidence and strong analysis is advocacy that will not be effective. But beyond the classroom, beyond the academic skills, it's creating opportunities and enable students to have experiences that are more than lines in their resume. And what's remarkable about students like Kira, like Anjali, and again, I could name many others, is that they're not just interested in gilding their resume. They're interested in making a difference in the world. And that's the most important part of my job, is to help them do that by also, through those experiences, learning what they are capable of contributing and where and how they can best contribute and make a difference. So the classroom is obviously critical in education, but to me, the classroom is a starting point. It's not the whole. Knowledge in itself is just information. It's what we learn to do with the knowledge that we have that makes knowledge important. And what inspires me to continue the work that I do is to see what my students and my colleagues are able to do with that knowledge and those skills as they pursue the kind of work that they are pursuing. And I'm deeply grateful to all of them and to Stanford and to H&S and to all the others who enable me to do a job here that is the most fulfilling that I've ever had the opportunity to do. So thank you to all.
Thank you, David, for those inspiring words, and I hope you hear the claps that are happening behind lots of muted microphones around the room. And congratulations again on your well-deserved award. I'd like to thank all of our presenters for sharing their thoughts today. You will see in the chat an opportunity to send your own congratulatory message. So please take advantage of that. Thanks also to our guests for joining us for this special celebration of David Cohen and his transformative teaching, scholarship, and mentorship. We wish all of you a wonderful afternoon.